All right. Good afternoon. My name is Michael Drulis. I am a budget consultant for the City of Lambertville. City of Lambertville. Today we're going to host our administrative budget hearings. Madam Clerk, have we publicly noticed for these meetings?
Well, this is not a city council meeting, but we did send out a notice. We put it on the city's website, as well as sent out a notice to everyone on our listserv of the budget hearings. Afterwards, after each recording will be posted to the city's website for the public to view.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So just to frame the discussion, I will read a brief statement about the purpose of the hearings today, and then our witness for municipal court is here, so we'll get right to it. The City of Lambertville will host in-person administrative budget hearings on a 2022 budget on February 8th and February 10th. At these hearings, city officials with budgetary responsibilities will provide budget requests for the 2022 budget, including capital planning. The hearings will be recorded and posted on the city website for public review. Administrative hearings are relatively unique in that the governing body and public are invited to participate in the meeting by attending and listening, but there's no public hearing or governing body action. The purpose of the hearings is to invite the public to witness the requests made by those who have regular responsibilities to operations and the budget. The hearings will be the basis for the appropriations portion of the draft introduced budget. The public will be invited to participate in the process once the budget is introduced to the council. Cindy and I will preside over the hearings, and I ask that the witnesses do arrive a few minutes early so we can move one into another. We will pause the proceedings between witnesses. We'll be primarily working through three categories: salary and wages, other expenses, and capital expenses. The salary and wage portion of the hearings will address salary and wages in the aggregate. The city officials will be asked if there's any known changes in the current workforce, such as retirements, resignations, eliminations of vacant positions, or requests for new positions, either full-time or part-time. No employee should be referenced by name or singled out in that discussion. Other expenses. Other expenses will be examined by the budget subcategory. City officials will be asked to describe what is currently in the year-over-year expense line and what changes should be expected for 2022 with spending reductions and additions. Capital expenses. The hearing officers will request a list of capital expenditures through projected costs, their lifespan, and purpose. At this point, I'm going to ask that from the right to the left, we just quickly introduce ourselves for the benefit of the public, please, starting with our clerk.
Hi, I'm Cindy Iggy. I'm the city clerk of the City of Lambertville.
Sue Bacorn, Deputy Treasurer.
Patricia Wozniak, Court Administrator.
Thank you. And again, I'm Michael Drulis, and with me is my associate, Ryan Berger. He'll be assisting me in recording information and putting the documents together. All right, so let's begin. Thank you for being with us today. We're going to start with the salary and wage line. Currently, the salary and wage line is from 2021. The budget was $81,073.21. The full amount was not expended in 2021. Can you just tell us why the full amount was not expended and what we should expect in 2022, please?
Yes, I would like to ask for a 2% raise on the 81,073. The reason why I didn't use all of that had to do with people who were out with COVID. I lost a violations clerk, so we went like about 6 weeks without having anybody. And then also the flood. There were also with Hurricane Ida, there was just, people weren't working. I was working, but, it was mostly due to the violations clerk salary.
So are these part-timers who, if they don't work, they don't get paid?
Part-time, right.
Okay. And so the number of, how many salary employees are there, full-time?
2. 1 full-time, 1 part-time.
1 full-time, 1 part-time. Okay. And that includes, that is you and a part-timer?
Yes.
Okay.
And the judge as well, correct?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. And the judge, he's,
Part-timer?
Part-time salary.
Okay. So 1 part-time salary, 1 part-time hourly, and 1 full-time salary. Okay. And the 1 part-time hourly scheduled and didn't work the full year for the reasons you stated. Okay. You started your response requesting a 2% increase. Could you just give a little information on that?
That's just the minimum that I've been asking for every year, just for all the hard work and for everything we've been through. So yeah, I'm just asking for the 2% raise for the year.
Okay,
If that's what is that the amount that the city, I believe, gives each year?
okay. All right, so commensurate with the city's increases, you'd like to be, you'd like
Yes.
this budget to consider that as well. Excellent, okay. Anything else on salary and wages?
Just want to know, is that across the board for everybody? The 2%?
No, it would just be for myself and the violations clerk, because the judge, you just did something on a judge.
Thank you.
Great. Anything else on salary and wages?
No.
Okay. All right, let's go to other expenses. In this category, I think it's important, just for the sake of the public, that we go line by line and briefly explain to us how you use this budget line and what we should expect in 2022. So starting with postage and delivery charges, in 20, you did not, it's about $1,650. It was not completely used in 2021. What do you expect for that category? What's in it? What do you expect for 2022?
I expect it to remain the same at $1,650. And that is basically used for court notices to notify people and late notices and basic communication. But it's mostly the late notices on parking tickets.
Okay.
And also, didn't in 2021, wasn't there some type of moratorium so we could not send out delinquent notices?
Right, we
Correct.
were able to start sending them back out in September, so basically, there was a good 6 months where we weren't allowed to do any kind of increases, and then towards the back end of the year, we were able to catch up, and now we're still able to continue with the sending of the late notices, and that's the bulk of that line.
So how does that compare with well, that's not a good year, 2020 either with COVID, but I'm just concerned because postage is going up. And I want to make sure that you have enough funds in that budget to cover the increase. And since we're going to hopefully be back 100%, that you can cover the expenses that you
Yeah, I
need.
thought about that. I think this number is okay because I did get stamps in December, a good amount of stamps in December of 2021. And then also some of the notices that I sent out are for virtual court that I'm doing email for now. So I think that this should be sufficient for the parking.
Thank you.
Printing and binding, last year was $22.50. You didn't expend it all. Tell us what's in there and what you intend to do.
Printing and binding is my biggest issue right now. Printing and binding, I need to ask for an increase for, basically because of the price of parking, the price for me to print a ticket. The price for me to print a ticket is 55 cents per ticket. And the police wrote over 6,500 tickets last year. So this is a line item that really can be reduced if I went towards a parking utility. If I went towards a parking utility, I wouldn't have this expense for paying for parking tickets. If a parking utility was set up, it would save me approximately $33.60 in printing of tickets, and then approximately $1,000 were the expense of entering tickets. And from what I'm told, from the research I've done, you would get more productivity.
Okay, before, I understand you're attempting to give us an analysis on a parking utility, and I do want to hear that, but I also don't want to stray too far from this printing and budget line. So I think at the end, let's talk about your research on the parking utility, but in the absence of having one, in the absence of having that in the budget right now, let's just say we didn't have a parking utility, can you please tell me what the printing and binding cost
Yes,
would be?
so I would need I need to double that.
Okay, so so what is the basis for doubling?
And so the basis for doubling was because I've always had a parking grant fund that I used for many years to order the tickets out of, the POAA grant fund. But that I used up and I barely have anything left in it. So Now, this expense line for printing and binding is gonna be all of $5,000 a year.
Okay, I have I listed 4,450,
Yeah,
right?
right.
4,500. So looking back, how long have you had this grant?
This grant has always been in place. I always had a balance of between $35,000 and $6,000. I always used that type of grant money for other things, which I can go into. But now, since COVID and due to IDA, you know, I barely have $700 left in there that I'm expecting to use to pay my part-timer when parking meter, when the summer season comes. It's a little extra on payroll for her.
Does this grant replenish annually?
Every month, it's about $160 that gets added to it.
And what is the factor that creates
It's-
revenue that goes to that grant?
Yeah, so it's basically on a late fee, a portion of the late fee goes to this account. So it's basically for the parking authority, the $10 late fee, we get like, you know, $2 per ticket on it.
Okay. So is it likely that eventually that grant will replenish itself
Yes,
in
it's- I'm
2023?
Yes,
Okay, so this will be a one-time 2022 increase until the grant can replenish
Yes.
itself. And I'm sure you thought this through, but will it replenish itself to any level in 2022 that we may end up not having to expend the full 4,500?
I think, and, you know, the part of the other issue was that I wasn't able to, in 2021, I wasn't able to collect late fees, so
Right.
it kind of stuck there for 2 years. And I don't think I'll be back where I was until probably 2024.
Okay. Okay, that's very informative, thank you. Let's go on to cleaning and maintenance of buildings, $950.
Yeah, I really don't have anything to do with that. It seems right.
Good.
I guess that's you guys.
It's the bulk of it is a hologon for the security.
Okay. All right, professional consulting and special services.
Yeah, this I had a question on. In my last year budget, it was a lot higher, and for some, are you allocating 400, are you asking me how much I need? Because I only spent 400 last year,
Right.
but that was because of the hurricane. I didn't need an interpreter nearly as much as I did in the previous years, so I definitely need more than $400 on that line item.
Okay, so that line item includes your professional contracts for interpreting.
Yes,
All right, and then let's go back to a year where you had a full year, which would have been 2019. And that year you spent $2,099, let's say $2,100 round numbers. And so going off that number, is that a
it
fair
doesn't have to
number?
be that high, because I would say I need about 1,600 on that line.
1,600,
Yes.
okay. I do remember us having a conversation about this, we did cut it because the court wasn't in session, so
Right.
I see that. Okay, books and publications, you didn't spend anything? Do you intend to spend anything?
I think there may be that one book I need to get for the judge, so that can remain the same.
Okay. Office computer supplies, you were $800, spent $703.55.
Yeah, that should stay the same.
Okay. What do you use that for?
Well, I have an old laptop that the city gave me that is on its way out. It's very difficult to use, it's outdated, so I'm probably gonna have to get something new on that, with those funds. To do admins, to be able to do any kind of city email or city functions, because I'm not able to do that through the state computer.
Right.
I'm blocked.
All right, so I think it's important we note that there is a need for a laptop replacement. The city is looking at all its technology, so I think we should include that in our evaluation. Thank you for mentioning it. Okay, conference and meetings. It's $30, nothing spent.
There'll probably be a few meetings I'll go to this year, so I would, can I have $100 on that line item?
Okay, move it to 100. Is your request, sure. Professional association dues,
That line item should remain the same.
Now, we overspent it last year, so I'd like it to
Oh,
be
I'm
right.
sorry.
That's okay, it was 35, we
Yes, I
spent
need it to be
60.
60, yes.
Okay, and just out of curiosity, did
Why?
we budget too low, or is there new things?
Oh, because one of them is the Tri-County Court Administrator Association, and the other is the state. So, that one year I didn't have the state association, but I wanted to go to I'd like to go to the functions with the league, so I have to be part of that.
Okay. Travel, nothing was expended, 35 is budgeted,
Yeah,
okay?
you can leave that.
Court safety equipment and supplies, 0 line.
I think I probably need a line item, not a lot, $100 maybe for, because of COVID and getting back into court, and maybe some, hand sanitizers and masks, and perhaps a thermometer, because we are getting back to in-court sessions in the next 2 months.
So does the city maintain any type of stockpile of these items? Hand sanitizer, COVID masks?
I'm just thinking, no, what we do is we order what we need on a monthly basis, and, like, I'll order enough for City Hall and then for these meetings. So we don't stockpile. The only thing we have a ton of is that sanitizer spray.
Do you need for sanitizing spray
Yeah, yes,
and a sanitizing gun?
yes.
Okay. All right, so does it make sense to start increasing department budgets for these COVID requests, or should we continue to stay centralized?
I think it makes sense to do it by department, because FEMA is only reimbursing for things associated with vaccinations. So these are not costs that they will
Okay,
assume.
all right, $100 you said?
Yes.
Okay. Great. Computer data processing equipment, now that's a little different, words are a little different than when we talked about, where is the other one? Computer supplies. So you have 300 there. How do you treat these categories differently from office computer supplies to computer data processing equipment?
Well, the office computer supplies, I'm just thinking about the actual laptop, getting a new laptop. Now, this line item, the way I look at it is, in case I have issues with the computers or the lines, which I'm having right now, due to some infrastructure issues that we had with the hurricane and the way the lines were redone here. So there are things that I may need in that line item.
Okay.
That's like, for instance, when she puts up her speakers, if there's a problem, she calls All Sound and they come in.
Oh, I see.
Yeah,
Okay.
things of that nature.
Okay. Phone communication charges, $100.
That should remain the same.
Okay. All right, so anything else on other expenses?
No.
All right, capital expenses. Do you have any capital, nothing, you're not obligated to, but do you have any capital expenses that you'd like to give us a project, the amount, and the lifespan of the project?
No.
Excellent.
So
Okay,
I
got
think,
a project.
would a computer fall under that?
It depends on where the whole plan lands.
Okay.
I mean, an $800 laptop, probably not, but sometimes when we start looking at these things, we find out that just a laptop may not be enough, and we may have to look at all the technology, so.
I would like for capital for the court and actually for this building to take a look at some other flood preventative measures that we might be able to do. Perhaps flood proofing of the doors, things like that. They did that at the school, and at our last flood, they had minimal damage from it.
Okay.
Yes, that is always very important to me. I just haven't ever been able to get it resolved, but it's just a huge issue in this building.
Thank you. Noted. All right. Well, thank you very much for being with us. Anything else?
Okay. No, thanks.
All right.
Thank
you for
you.
letting us use your space here.
Sure thing. Thank you.
Okay, we just took a brief pause. Our witnesses have changed. I'll ask our next witness to please introduce themselves and what they do here for the city.
I'm Ken Rogers, the construction official. I take care of all construction issues in the city as far as residential commercial properties go, and building inspections, permits, violations, certificates of occupancy, those those items.
Okay. And Ken, I want to recognize you and your team. Really were very helpful to the residents following the Ida storm. So thank you. So we're going to go over salary and wages, other expenses, and then capital expenses. And under salary and wages, I ask that we be mindful that we speak things in the aggregate and in general terms, never to talk about single employees or single employees out. So let's begin with salary and wages. So your salary and wage line is broken out between Uniform Construction Code salary and wage, Uniform Construction Code Frenchtown salary and wage. Let's start with the first one, the Construction Code salary and wage. In 2021, we were budgeted $105,656. You used most of it, if not almost all of it. So what's in that line item, and what do you expect in terms of 2022, please?
That is all of the salaries for all of our employees, and I believe for substitute inspectors too. I'm not sure exactly where they will substitute. Yes, the ones that came in as temporary workers for the flood. I'm not
Sue's
sure
agreeing with
exactly
you. Her head is
where
nodding.
that got paid out of, but that is there. There were a couple of employees. I know we're not singling anybody out, so we'll just give you the total, but there were a
Sure.
couple employees that were promised raises 2 years ago, and then because of the COVID issues, they got approximately half of those raises with the promise the other half would come the next year. They did not get them this last year in 2021, so I want to make sure that those get considered into the salary wage for this year. That is about a $4,500 number as an increase for those two employees.
All right, so the total amount was $105,656 in 2021. What would you be recommending the salary wage for that line be in 2022 based on what you just said?
So it would be another 4,500, so 110,156, if I'm doing my
All right.
math right in my head. I didn't do that.
So 4,500 for both in
Yes.
total.
Plus whatever percentage increase we would be getting.
Did they receive those increases, did they receive the 2% increase last year?
I believe there, I don't remember, last year was, the year before, no increases, I think,
No, everyone's gotten 2%.
every year.
Okay,
Every
so,
year.
all right, so we'll have to do a little internal analysis on that, but the total number would be approximately 110 is what you're projecting or recommending.
110 plus the 2% would be 112,
Okay,
112, 113.
the number keeps going up, we're gonna move on.
No, we
I'm
can stay right here a
kidding.
little
I'm
longer
kidding.
if we could.
All right, no, that's good. So anything else before we go to Frenchtown?
Nope, that's
Okay.
good for
And-
Lambertville's work.
So if you can, when you explain about Frenchtown, just tell us how, as a manager, you utilize these two different line items for your staff and the work you do, please.
Frenchtown is an interlocal arrangement with Lambertville. We provide all of the same construction services to Frenchtown that we provide for the city of Lambertville. It's done through our office, but finance reasons, we've just kept those items separate to make sure that Lambertville's not supporting Frenchtown, Frenchtown's not supporting Lambertville in any deficit or issue like that. This last year, Frenchtown did far more work and far more revenue than Lambertville did. We had quite an excess in Frenchtown in revenues, and that was for a lot of projects that got started. Footings and foundations went in the ground, and those projects are now on hold because contractors can't get materials and delays, so they decided not to even start until they could settle up what their cash flow is going to be, get one of their buildings open, and then build the next building and that kind of thing. So some of the money that we have received this year will actually need to be used in salaries for next year in Frenchtown. There are still a number of other large projects to be done in Frenchtown. A couple of them got held up a little bit this last year. We expected them to start last year, and they didn't. Not at all, no permits issued at all on them, so those we do expect to get rolling this year. So we expect the same work level in Frenchtown for this year as we have had for the last 2 or 3 years. So I don't expect any changes in the salary needs for Frenchtown for this coming year.
And I think it's important to note for the record that we should have some kind of analysis of what portion of the revenue is actually going to be reserved at some level in 2022 for 2022 expenses. You're right, the numbers were different.
Yeah.
There was a spike, and it's always good to know why, so thank you. So talk about, do you have a workforce just for one salary and wage line, one for the other, or it's the same? Same.
It's the same workforce.
So how many employees are represented in that entire workforce between what's currently here of approximately $185,000?
There is myself, Crystal, the technical assistant, Tim Dieterman, our plumbing subcode official, Keith Steele, our electric subcode official, and then we have one substitute electric inspector, Victor Tempanero.
How many full and how many part-time?
There are no full-time, they're all part-time.
Well, Crystal's full.
All
I'm sorry,
the
I'm sorry.
employees are listed.
I always, yeah.
That's okay.
Crystal is full-time, so there's one full-time and the rest of us are
And
part-time.
4 part-time. And I
3, 4, yes.
apologize, I should not have said a name, but 1 full-time, 4 part-time.
That's correct, yes.
Part-time salary.
Part-time salary.
Well, Victor is hourly. when he
Right,
comes
the
in.
substitute is hourly, but
Yeah,
the,
everybody else is salary.
all the other
All right,
part-timers.
so there's 3 categories, right? We got one full-time, and then we have part-time hourly, which is 1,
Yes,
and then we have part-time salary, which is
3.
great. Thank you. Okay. Anything else in salary and wages?
No.
Cindy?
No other questions now?
All right, let's take a look at OE, please. I'd like just to speak through these line items, just let us know what you use them for, what we can expect in the upcoming year. So there is no change fund anymore, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and there will not be a change fund in 2022.
I wouldn't say no, because the problem is we can't commingle money. And so as things come up and Frenchtown gets more active and if people start paying cash, she may have to make a change and we may have to give back a change fund.
Okay, we'll make a note that there's a change fund if it's so requested.
If so requested, yes.
But we're not requesting that now.
Not as of this date, no.
Okay.
No. But we have experienced some issues where people are bringing in big bills that she can't cash. They come down to my office to pull from my till, we can't mix money, and so sometimes that presents a problem. If that begins to become more of an issue, we may have to revisit that.
Okay. Okay, well, what would a till be, what is your till total?
50. And so I can't imagine that although she would probably be at the same range at a 50. Actually, mine's 100.
I don't know what
It was supposed to be 100, we never upped it to 100.
we talked about
We talked,
changing
and
it.
it's
Well,
in the
Mayor.
resolution, but anyway, 100 for me, I would say she would need 50, I would think.
Well, if we, then I suggest we put that in as a requested amount for consideration for the future, because change funds require a lot of
Yes.
paperwork, so we should at least be accounting for it, I think. Okay. UCC printing and binding?
That would be for forms and permit applications. We have not had to purchase any forms in a little while. People are more and more using printable and fillable forms off the website, and they're just bringing the copies in themselves, and then copies that we make of those for our records are done right on our copier in the office. So we have not been using, we have not purchased forms in a while.
Leave it at
We
50.
used to spend $1,500
Yeah.
a year in printing forms, but we haven't done that in a while.
We may get this later. What about
50 is a
the-
pretty low number. If we do need to order a small packet of forms, which we will at some point, it's gonna be $200 or $300, just for a small order.
That just hasn't, but we've not spent that amount of money. You may be spending it out of another account.
It is, it came out of, office equipment, office computer supplies last year. It did not come out
There it
of
is.
printing.
That's 14.
The vendor name is K
1,450,
Printing.
right? Yeah. Okay, does that include your jackets as well? The folders?
Yes, I thought you were talking about work jackets with a Lambertville name on them, which would be really nice, but we don't have
We
that.
didn't get to that category, I'll let you know when we do.
I can
So,
always-
all right, so we'll leave printing and binding alone, we'll come back to the discussion on the folders, not the jackets, the folders and the paperwork as we move on. Maintenance of other equipment, it's, nothing was spent last year, in the previous years, that category did have expenditures in them. Sue, can you tell us anything about maintenance of other equipment?
Give me a sec, I have to go back. You said there was something there in 20?
Yes, there was, no, in 2019,
18.
in 2018, in 2017, it was like $1,500 average.
Well, we were budgeting differently then. And so some of that could have been things unique to the construction office, whereas now it's going into an administrative account.
My only concern is these zeros were during a COVID lockdown time, and if these zeros, if something's gonna pop back
Yeah.
up. But it's likely what you're saying, Cindy, it's,
Yes, that's exactly what it is. 2019, the computer services for the entire city was being split amongst the departments.
okay?
So that's why there's a cost in that line for 2019. It was the constructions portion, because we would divide the monthly bill up by the departments and the number of computers they had in that department.
Okay, so we can keep that at zero then,
I would think so, yes, because that's all coming out of the admin budget at this time.
okay?
And according to UCC, that's the way it should be. That's part of the, what do they call it? Indirect expenses, which is technically the 12, these are numbers maybe you don't need, but the 12% that the town is entitled to take of the construction office revenues is supposed to cover those normal office equipment and expenses. So doing it out of the admin is probably the correct way of doing it.
Okay, thank you. All right, UCC books and publications,
That's, we do on occasion purchase a book here and there, except when there's a code cycle change, which I am expecting this year. The state hasn't said that they are going to do it this year, but we're expecting the 2021 codes to be adopted by the state in 2022. They adopted the 18 codes in 2019, and we can spend upwards of $3,000 on code books when there is a code cycle change, so.
so what's a reasonable number though, not knowing if that will be adopted?
Well, a reasonable number would cover that full expense, and in 2019, we spent almost 2,400 with cost
It's
increase.
2020. 2019 spent
Oh, I'm sorry.
105.
Yeah, I was gonna say 2019.
Well, maybe the purchase wasn't actually until 2020. I'm not sure, I'd have to go back and look, see when we purchased those books, but in order to have books and publications at that level, that would have been the year that we purchased the code books.
So can you give us a sense, are you reasonably certain that it's going to be a new code book year? I mean, $3,000 is, it's a big line item change here.
If there were no COVID issues, then I would be 95% positive it would be done. But with the COVID issues, the state is off and on going remote
Right.
work back to the office, remote work back to the office, depending on what the current status is. And I know once they go to remote work, it slows their processes down a little bit.
In 2020, code books were purchased,
Okay.
and it was $2,200, $2,283.79.
Yeah, that was just one purchase,
That,
or was that?
that
Both,
was
because-
ICC, that's who it was made out to, and I just
Okay.
have description as code books, and then there was another $80 for the plumbing code book.
Right, okay.
So should we then look to, as a projection for this discussion, the 2020 numbers? Looking at
I would do that with a fair increase, because materials and costs are going up significantly, and I don't know what the current code book costs would be. But I would feel comfortable with putting a number closer to $3,000.
All right, 3,000 is what you're suggesting, we will make note of it, thank you. All
Actually,
right.
I had written 3,500 down here before I just saw that, but 3,000 I would be comfortable with.
Okay. Use to see computer supplies. That budget line 1,500 last year was mostly used. What's in there?
I'm not sure what is purchased out of that, other than
It's
office
looking to Sue,
materials
maybe
and
Sue knows.
supplies and,
Staples, general office supplies, ink cartridges, and that K printing was miscoded into that category last year.
okay.
So then,
And ink costs are substantial for our office because we are doing a lot of the printing in the office rather than sending it out.
so Sue, what's reasonable here? Should we continue to put that expense in this line or adjust other lines accordingly? That's expensive.
The printing, the forms, is that what you're asking?
You mentioned company name, I missed it.
K printing.
K Printing.
I think it should go into the printing and binding, the first line item in the budget, the UCC printing and binding. That'll give us a true number of what we're spending on forms.
So then, Ken, what do you think about moving your office supplies back to 500 and then increasing the printing and binding by $1,000?
I think that's pretty low for office supplies, that 500. If you look back a couple
2020.
of years, 2017, we spent 2,400
But
there.
it could be the same problem,
Yeah, and
I
1,500.
think that's the same problem though.
that the forms got put there. I can look it up if you like.
Let's get ahead. What was the price for the forms in previous year?
Well, for last year, what was our forms
Well, she'd have to,
for K printing?
she'd have to, I think we'd need a calculator to calculate them all.
Oh, you don't have the invoice?
It lists them all, but it looks like it's a substantial amount.
All right, well then, for the sake of this hearing today, why don't we just make a note that we have to do an analysis, and that it's the intention to put the K printing back into the printing and binding line, and find historic figures for the office supplies only, and then we will
Yeah.
move forward with that accordingly.
Makes sense.
Thank you. All right, conferences and meetings.
I feel we should have $1,000 in there. That is for any, we haven't had a building safety conference in the last couple of years, so we haven't spent any money on that. It is anticipated to be taking place in Atlantic City this year. And then we have the flood conference that I haven't been to in a couple of years as well. And each conference would cost, just for me going, is going to be in the close to $400 price tag for the conference and hotel stay for each of those conferences. I think the flood conference, they don't get as good a rate at the hotel, and it's usually a little bit higher for that conference.
So who goes to the conferences amongst your staff?
I do. Crystal has gone. She doesn't go very often. Tim Dieterman usually does not go. Keith Steele goes once in a while. Victor Tempanaro has gone. I don't anticipate him to go in the future, but he has gone quite a number of times.
So you are a full-time employee here for
No.
Lambertville?
No, I'm part-time.
You're part-time, and your other are part-time as well.
Yes.
So there are other communities that are also supporting these conferences and these registrations and
Yes.
these hotels, and how do you factor equity amongst all the communities that you service to make sure that, just like Frenchtown's and Lambertville keeps us separate, how do we do that with these conferences and registrations?
Usually what I do for building safety and for the flood conference is I submit everything for the flood conference to Lambertville, and building safety to Bedminster, the other primary town that I work in. And to me, that always kept it balanced because I have more hours there as their construction official. However, here I am the floodplain administrator where I'm not there, so I've done that before. Memberships to associations, I would just split those between the two towns.
Okay.
There's the Building Officials Association, Construction Officials Association, and membership to ICC, to NFPA, and both flood associations, New Jersey Flood Association, which is a subchapter of the
So we have
floodplain managers.
conferences and meetings, education and training, and professional association dues. Those are the three that are relevant to this conversation.
Okay.
Conference and meetings, education, training, professional association dues. Based on the methodology you just explained, can you provide me the numbers by category and how you can just, to the benefit of the viewers and the public, how you split that up amongst those three with equity between us and other communities?
I don't have the numbers in front of me for the conferences.
Okay.
I have given you just general numbers, but as an example, the flood conference, generally the fee for the flood conference is $150 to $200.
All right, if you don't have them here, would you
I
mind,
have
would you mind just providing us at a later time, just a one-pager on how you're gonna split this up, and then we can associate it here?
Mhm.
Thank you.
In 2019, I have the league attendance that we paid for on the NJAFM conference.
That's the flood conference.
Okay, so that
All right.
was
Well,
in
maybe you and Ken can talk offline and put this all, given the historic data, it'll be helpful to him. And then he can put forth a plan.
$600 it cost.
Okay. All right, looking to Frenchtown. Frenchtown has its own OE. And that's, office supplies is in there, and, you know, I'm maybe not reading this right, so you can help me. Account 301.
Yeah, it's just for, I guess at one point, we were going to try to share the expenses of the office supplies, the ink cartridges and that type of thing.
We have office supplies in 302, but what is 301?
Anytime we needed forms for Frenchtown, we tried to purchase them on a separate invoice and then take those forms to Frenchtown.
It just,
Leave them in the office there.
it just seems like the money was not, $13,000 was not expended. That's one
Yeah,
of the
that's
top
a
five
different,
numbers on
yeah,
that page.
I don't know what that,
13.8.
I don't know why that's
Yeah,
there.
the 250 for the office supplies were good.
Yeah.
So we were just looking at Frenchtown right now?
Yeah, Frenchtown account 301. You want the whole string?
I have it, thank you. I only have two. 301 is the UCC fees.
Okay, that's where we bill back?
Yes.
Okay.
That's the state portion of the fees,
The DCA fees.
yes.
Thank you. So that amount is what we remit to DCA on behalf of Frenchtown for the state's fees. Very good. Are you giving that by formula? Is that a formula we get to project?
It's based on permits, cost of work, and volume for new construction. Cost of work for renovations and volume for new construction. There is a specific number for that, but
What
it's
number
not,
should we anticipate? How should we anticipate our number?
that's very difficult to anticipate.
Particularly, so if we had a lot of activity in 2021, does that mean that that was paid in 2021, all that activity, or is that activity going to get paid to the state in 2022 for Frenchtown?
If it was done, if the permits were issued in 2021, then the fees would have been issued to the state the same year as 2021.
I stand corrected, that is the Frenchtown's portion.
That they pay us?
No,
Or
that we pay
them?
them. That's what's in 301, I stand corrected.
And that number, if I can say this on open public record here, that number should be adjusted in our contract with them, because we're, by law, only to pay them what, the value of what they do for the construction office. What they do for the construction office there is keep the forms in a rack. So that's an awful lot of money to pay the last couple of years for them keeping the forms on a rack on the counter.
I believe that contract's up the end of this year.
Okay,
Yeah, it's the quarterly payments.
well, we haven't paid it in 2021 for my report.
It's because
You must have paid it somewhere else.
it was, there's a line item in here that says revenue offset amount due to Frenchtown. That's an expenditure that was entered by the CMFO
Where?
under 301. when I look at the detail for that line item number, 301, it's UCC Frenchtown.
But, so my print report doesn't have that information on it? Two up from the bottom?
Yes, that's at the 13,865.
Those was appropriated. My actual says $117.
I see 117.40.
That's
Annual.
because of, I think that's because of the adjustment that was made by the CMFO. See here, we wanted 13,000, right, we appropriated 13,865, and then there was an adjustment made, adding 13,747 to that line item. So it's difference of 117 is what you're saying.
I see. Okay, we have some, we're gonna have to bother Ken with this. We have some work to do here and making a note of what you're saying regarding Frenchtown's obligation for that fee as well. We'll make sure that we do analysis of what Frenchtown's obligation to fee is and to find out what we're doing in terms of how we're booking these expenses, these documents. Okay. That's the end of my list. Let's go to capital unless you have anything for OE.
Nothing else for OE.
All right, learn capital, and as I tell everyone, don't feel obligated. If there's nothing you want, you don't have to really say anything, but if you do, give it to us by project, amount, and lifespan of the project, please.
There is one item that I think is wise to consider, and I'll start with a state or a law that was signed by the governor last April for electronic plan review and electronic permit submission. We're in good shape with the SDO program to take care of the electronic permit submissions. The plan review issues is going to be another item though, and I would request that we purchase what's called an I-plan table. That is the best and setup for doing electronic plan reviews. That cost on that plan review table is about $15,000. It provides a touchscreen, wide, large format touchscreen monitor so you can read plans as if you have printed copies right in front of you, touchscreen, and then you have a couple extra monitors to keep plan review comments and code books open while you're doing the electronic review. It's a very valuable setup. There are a number of townships that have purchased them a couple of years ago in anticipation of this, but we're at the point where that law has to be put into effect by the DCA by April this year. We expect a small extension to be done to that, but we have to be in compliance with that law by April this year, so.
Is 15,000 inclusive of software?
There are no well, whatever, I have to look back. Yes, I believe it's fully self-contained.
Okay.
So that, yeah, you can do all the review, the comments, everything, and then it can connect to the server for Lambertville.
And what's the lifespan?
Pretty much like any other computer, but
5 years plus?
5 years plus, I would say definitely on that.
Okay. Thank you. Anything else on capital?
That's it.
Great.
Unless you want to buy us a car, but that's never going to happen here.
Oh, put that on the list. Been noted.
Yeah.
Anything else?
No, no other comments.
All right. Thank you very much. Have a great day. Enjoy this
Thank you.
nice warming weather. All right. Thank you. Our next witness has arrived. I ask if you please introduce yourself and what you do for the city.
Bambi Cool, I do general assistance and other things related to that.
Great. Thank you. All right. So we're going to speak about your budget in three ways: salary and wages. And we ask that we keep all conversations to the aggregate, no specific employees, other expenses, and any capital requests. So we'll start with the salary line. Talk about in 2021, there was $17,031.66 allocated in the budget. The amount spent was a little less than that. So is just curiosity, is there a reason why you didn't fully expend the budget? And is there anything we should be talking about different in 2022?
Probably with COVID, that made a difference. Supplies. I don't know, usually money is taken out of my budget for Computer and office supplies, right?
The payroll shortage.
Okay,
That's why
That's
it
why.
wasn't completely spent.
Oh, okay.
all right, so this is actually a line item in the bookkeeping that Sue just identified was related to something else that we're aware of, so.
Okay.
So, what do you expect in 2022? Anything different?
Nope.
Great. All right, let's look next to the OE. So, there has been no need for printing and binding in the past. I don't imagine there's anything new there. All computer supplies, there's a $200 budgeted, only $40 were spent. You're in a common office space, I know.
Yes.
So, okay, any reason to change that 200?
No.
Okay. Conference and meetings, not a category that's used in the last 5 years. Professional dues, is there an association that
Yes.
you're a part of?
Yeah, the Municipal Welfare Association, yeah.
Will you be registering for that this year?
I will.
Okay, so $90 is still adequate?
Yes.
Great. And then communication charges, as you alluded to, I believe you portion of her budget is used overall.
Same.
Good. All right. Anything else on OE, salary, wages?
I don't think so.
No.
Anything capital?
No.
Great. Well, unless you have anything else, thank you for being with us.
Thank
The
you.
only thing, maybe for capital, did you
Oh.
need a printer? Because on occasion, Bambi prints, most of her printing is checks. And when she prints to the copier that we all share, almost every time you have to print, secrets, she ends up ruining a check or two. She puts it in, we don't know, we hit this print button and her checks go. So I was wondering if it would be prudent to get her own printer so that she could print her checks and not have to worry that somebody else is going to print on top of it.
That's true. And that which drawer it's going to decide to take,
Right.
so, yeah.
And every once in a while, we do have a problem with the RICO pulling from the correct drawer.
Mhm.
And so we have to try and figure out how to fake it into printing for us.
Leave the drawer open.
Yeah, so I would think just a small printer for her to print checks on.
Okay.
And Sue, you no longer need indelible ink, correct?
Correct, you do not.
So-
There's a printer in my office, there was a printer in my office.
Well, that's down there
on her
now.
desk right
Oh,
now.
you already have it?
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
yeah,
Then we should be fine.
unless you want
But
to.
is
long-
it,
I don't want it. I'll
Bambi,
keep
is it
printer.
hooked up and everything? Is it workable?
I haven't.
Because that's old, it was in my office.
Okay, Mike brought it down and said.
Yeah, that is an old printer,
Yes.
and it got a lot of use in my office.
But wait, I do remember Mike saying it does not have a long life to it. And he was not sure that he could get it to even interact because we're on Windows 10
Right,
and that printer is from.
It's old.
I
Okay.
think the appropriate thing here is to make a note in our record that this too should be considered in our technology plan and review. Mike is stone's throw from you,
Mhm.
so make sure he doesn't forget about you in his work and study.
okay,
But we'll make sure it's included there.
all right,
Good. All right. Anything else?
that's it.
Very good.
Thank
Thank
you.
Great. Welcome back. We are final witness of the day. If you please introduce yourself.
Susan Schlesinger, newly appointed fire official.
Tell us a little bit about what you do for the city.
I inspect residences and businesses for fire safety. And
Welcome. How long have you been with us?
I think
The end of December.
end of December, pretty much.
Great. So with that being said, there's enough folks here on the panel that could help you through this
Okay.
hearing. We don't expect that you would know things, but we do value your opinion and your thoughts. We're going to talk about your budget in 3 ways. We're going to start with salary and wages,
Okay.
then we're going to talk about other expenses, and lastly, we're going to end with capital.
Okay.
On the salary and wage side, we really don't talk about any individual employee, we speak in the aggregate. So let's start with last year, your office was appropriated $22,378.25. Do you anticipate any major changes? Cindy, is there any personnel matters we
Yes.
should discuss?
Not with personnel.
Okay,
Not at this point, but I think Mayor Noack would like to, is working with Sue so that we can revisit this position in May or June and decide what really is needed to get us through the rest of the year. We had an employee who was, prior to the hire of Sue Schlesinger, who did both zoning and fire. And so it's difficult to get a sense of what is really needed when you separate both. So, and we also know that the landlord registration was not being handled efficiently and effectively, and needs to be. So we don't really know at this point what is needed.
Okay. In
So-
terms of the adoption of the budget, how do you see a timeline going to us to get a number here?
So I would think that if we added 10,000 to the current budget, it would allow us, if needed, to add a part-timer,
Okay.
if needed.
All right, and then we'll have to take additional action relative to the planning budget as well, I guess, because that was one person split into two now,
Correct.
so, okay.
Zoning.
Zoning, sorry. Thank
That's
you.
right, you threw me when you
Thank
said
you.
planning, I'm like,
No,
wait a minute.
Well, to me, planning and zoning are like, but,
Yeah. Okay, all right, so we're projecting a $32,378 line here.
yes.
Okay, all right. Anything like to add on salary and wages?
Not really, not at this time. no.
Okay. Let's move on to other expenses. So we have in here a category for advertising, and in 2020, that number was appropriated $2,700, nothing was spent. Last year, $100 was appropriated, but $566 was spent. That $566.30 sounds like an advertisement for
That's exactly what
a
it
job.
is.
Yes,
That number sticks in my head.
Yes.
Is-
So we might want to leave that there in the event that we need to hire a part-timer.
So we should raise it to about 600?
Correct.
Okay,
That's about the average of what our personnel ads are costing.
great. Okay. Postage has been down. It's relatively underutilized. It was $100 last year. Was it used at all? So stay at $100?
Well, I think we should take that to 200. We have, postage is going up, number one. Number two, we were previously using Mobilize that, and I think a lot of things were emailed out, but in emailing them, people weren't receiving them or opening them or paying.
Oh.
And so I don't know where the money came from last year, but towards the end, we had tons of mail going out. Maybe it was under the construction budget, because it's the same personnel that supports it. So I don't know at this point what the overall will be needed, but I think we should add a little more to it.
Seems that by adding $100, we're going to be recouping the necessary fines, and so that's a good investment.
Yes.
Okay. Books and publications, are there any books that you use or need to do your job that you
Well-
don't have?
The Division of Fire Safety does, they do courses, which we are required to take. They're updates of codes and such. So there may be some books involved with that. It depends.
So these are books the city would buy for you to use?
Well, it's more the courses, it's more of a, you know, you would take the course and then come in a book with the information with their book.
Right, I think this is more like a statute or something like that that
Like
you
a
might
code book
need.
that you
Yeah,
actually
yeah,
use.
And
Do you
what-
have your necessary code books in your office?
We are also online, so we, yeah.
Okay. So we don't need books. That's okay. All right, let's go on to, because we'll talk about conferences and meetings later.
Yeah, okay.
Computer services, computer supplies.
Okay, so we are transitioning from Mobilize to SDL, and I believe that's a $4,000 software hit.
Yes, Tyler Technologies, which is Mobilize, is $3,300.
But when we move over to SDL, we own the software, but we're migrating the records. And so they have to do that for us. And that cost, I believe, was $4,000.
We spent the money in 2021. We spent some.
Tyler Technologies, that is the Mobilize app that we paid, it's July through June a renewal. So we are currently paid up to June 30th of this year for Mobilize.
That gives us time to migrate over to SDL.
So the 3355 last year was in support of Mobilize. Now, there's costs for services to convert the data.
That's correct, that's $4,000.
Okay, so we're going to spend, if the budget was 3,500 last year, we're gonna raise that budget to 4,000,
Correct.
and then that 4,000 is a one-time spend to get our data migrated.
That is correct. And then I believe SDL is redesigning their user fees, so it'll be much less. But I think what they're going to do, and they're still in discussion, is for 2023, there'll be like a $500 user fee.
Okay,
But with-
but currently there's no fee for SDL.
Correct,
This
because
line.
she's configured in our number of users.
Good,
which is charged to the admin line.
Yes.
okay. All right, meetings, conferences, would you anticipate this year in terms of any type, that would also include your training?
Yes, there will be some, there will be some.
So do you have any idea of how much each course costs?
It depends where the course is, but there are required courses that we have to take, which will be time that I hope they're not on the days that, I'm gonna hope they're not on the
Okay.
same days that, I'll have to figure out where to put it.
Yeah.
But there will be some courses. Usually, the Division of Fire Safety, they don't charge, but if there's some extra ones that they bring in someone, there might be, they may bring in another speaker or something like that.
So what did we budget last year?
We've always spent 200, 210.
Okay, so maybe if we just leave it at the 210 for this year?
Sure. Do you have certifications?
Yes,
Mhm.
Are they required to be kept up annually?
it's every 3 years.
And where are you on your 3-year cycle?
On 2023. So I have,
Okay.
so that's why I have to make sure I take these courses, because I
Okay,
have to.
so this is gonna
Yeah.
be the year that you really want to
But I-
catch up just in case.
And what happened was, the COVID closed down all the courses.
Right.
So they were doing some online, but they weren't giving you the credits as much as if you were in one, and it screwed up everything.
So you are part-time for
I'm
Lambertville. Do you service any other communities?
No, I don't.
Okay, so we are the only person that you would take these courses in
Courses
order
for,
to take
yeah,
certification
right,
for.
correct.
All right, so at 250 maybe? I mean, if you just do all
Yeah,
the courses?
250, yeah, I think that would cover us.
Okay,
And certainly, we when we do the budget, we separate things out into different line items, but it's really just salary and operating expense. So if we need to pull from another line item, we could.
good. Association fees, do you have an annual association you're part of?
No.
Okay, so we can take that out to 0. Great. So last thing would be any requests you have for capital, large purchases?
Yes, we need to purchase something that will be effective for her to work with SDL. We had a Surface Pro that Frank was using, but it died. Councilman Stegman was kind enough to bring his back. And we're using that now.
Used it today.
But, yeah, but it is dated. These were purchased in 2014. So, and I'm not sure how effective or how easy it's going to be to use with SDL.
Yes, that's right.
So, I would say that we should budget $800 or $900 to either get an up-to-date Surface Pro or an iPad, but some type of device for her to use.
A handheld.
A handheld, yeah.
All right, is Mr. Humphrey aware of this need?
He is.
Okay.
That's how I know it's 8 or 9. It depends on whether we go Surface Pro or iPad.
Well, you're using a tablet for data entry. Where are you doing your heavy processing after that?
Actually, I was using a computer at home, because I'm using an old computer at home, which I can't unplug because the battery's not good. So I've been working off my dining room table, looking through, because again, I'm looking through,
When you're on site, how do you keep information?
that little computer is what I'm using. And then how this Mobile Eyes works, it has a little program in there, I just did an inspection. I now have to take that little computer and I have to go to a place where I have Wi-Fi, and I then load it, and it loads into the website of Mobile Eyes and takes that information and connects
So
it
you
together.
go on site, you get your data.
Right.
It uploads, and then you probably have to sit at a desktop
Yes,
and at that
yes.
point to process
And
your
then make
work.
sure that we, yeah.
So, all right, so where you don't have a PC to do that, that's the city's PC.
We had a shared PC with the tax collector.
Yes, right.
Right, and that is still available
Oh, is
if
it?
that's, yes, we just would need to get her set up,
Mhm.
a user sign-on. But there was discussion because it's such a difference between upstairs and downstairs, you know, and she works mostly with the construction secretary, of moving her up there. And there are 2 computers in that office. However, one of them is used by the construction official. So I don't know whether that would be something that we could do with a timeshare type.
It just seemed to me a simple tablet to get on the road, it doesn't need to go to the level of a Surface Pro or an iPad, if there's enough horsepower when she comes back to the office to process.
So, so that I don't know. However, you have to keep in mind, you're taking pictures.
Tablets have the camera on them, and
Yes.
it goes right into the software.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
matter of fact, I did that today, I took some
Yeah.
pictures.
So, I know Mike did some, research on this to see what would be compatible with SDL.
Okay,
And that's how we came up with that number.
okay, great. Anything else? Capital or
Um,
we?
No, because I think whatever she gets, well, also when she comes back to the office, if she needs to print anything out, she could print it out through the copier.
Good,
I think we're fine.
beautiful. Well, that wasn't too bad, right?
I did.
You did great. Congratulations. So much fun, we'll do it again next year.
Yes,
Thank you for your help.
thank you, thanks for inviting me over.
All
And
right.
that concludes our meetings.
That's right, that concludes all our hearings,
We're
right?
all done.
Fantastic.
All
Thank
right.
you very much, Cindy.
All right.
Thank
Thank
you,
you, everybody,
Sue.
for joining
Thank
us.
you, Ryan.
Again. Talk to
So
you.
glad to have Councilman or Mayor here. Thank you for listening in.
All right. And good night.